Welcome to Flow Design Architects, a company that works with you and for you.
Fireside chat, and I want to introduce Jorge Andrade, my fellow committee member, associate director of the Leadership Committee. Please take it away, sir.
Thank you. Okay, this is on. I'm used to talking on the mic. I usually got a loud voice to begin with, but we'll see how this goes. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good? Okay. All right, well, we'll get there. Here we go. All right, perfect. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. My name is Jorge Andrade. I'm a business banking relation manager at Capital One Bank. Unfortunately, I've been in the business now close to 20 years, so getting old now, but that's okay. I want to thank Colette for bringing in this great presentation, and Claire for your great presentation as well. As we can see with Claire's presentation, the journey of an entrepreneur is very unique, and every entrepreneurial journey is very different. But the ability for them to acquire capital is something that they're all going to need. And every journey for the entrepreneur to acquire capital is not the same. None of those entrepreneurs have the same exact journey, just as we don't have the same exact journey in our lives. So when it comes to that portion part of it, from our point of view, it's very important for entrepreneurs to listen and to hear stories of success, and to hear how our entrepreneurs that are here today got to that level. So I'm excited to be able to present our group of panelists here this afternoon that they're going to share how their journey started, how it went, and what they did to acquire capital. So for this evening, if we're going to do a little prices right kind of thing, you can come on down, please. I would love to introduce my first panelist, Hansi Barraza, co-founder of Studio Luz Architect. Come on down. You're going to tell that. Second, Michael Aparicio, founder and CEO of Rabbi LLC. And our third panelist, Darguin Fortuna, architect and principal at Flow Design. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming, the three of you. Lovely to see you all. First question, I'm going to fire it off. If you, in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, if you can tell us a little bit about your business, how long you've been in business, and who your customers are.
Sure. So I think I'll well, good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Aparicio. I'm founder of Rabbi. We are a small business consulting firm. So we have a focus to help community-based small businesses, particularly those that are minority-owned, immigrant-owned, women-owned, LGBTQ-owned. Our business model is to partner with municipalities and offices of economic development. Our first client at that level is the city of Austin, and we're now expanded to Arlington, Virginia, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, Tacoma, Washington, and several other cities around the US. Our kind of core areas around strategy, technology, digital marketing, website development. So we have a team now, we're 10 people, based in Boston.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Hansi.
Hola, Hansi Barraza. Buenas tardes, buenas noches. La comida deliciosa. Gracias. Studio Luz Architects, we started in 2002. We've been in business for 21 years. 21. Someone said, now I can drink, now our business can drink. Our focus is really people, places, and our environment. Studio Luz, the name comes from a maternal lineage of paying homage to my mother, Luz Karim, Colombian. Our clients are really, it's three sectors. The housing developers, meaning luxury all the way to affordable housing. The second one is commercial, any kind of commercial interior retail work. And then the third one is university nonprofit organizations. And I'm really glad to be here with my fellow Latinx.
Darwin, tell us about you. David.
So Darguin Fortuna from Flow Design Architects, Dominicano, that's why the food was so good. Of course, of course. Flow Design Architects are based out of Salem, Mass. We're a team of architects of about 12. It goes from 12 to 11 to 10, depending on the day. And with my 3 kids, I guess we're 15. We focus on diversity and increasing diversity in the field of architecture and design. That's a mission that came about after we were looking into what's our why, right? And the why kind of hit us in the head when we looked at ourselves in the mirror, right? It's like, wait a minute, there are not a lot of Latino architects, or at least there are not a lot of voices that are amplified within the construction, engineering, and design industry. So we focus on that, and then we do architecture. And increasing diversity, we take it really hard. So we train the next generation of architects. We connect with clients of a diverse background who probably don't even know how to say the word architects, like my mom didn't know. So, and we make sure that that just spreads around. So anywhere where the word diversity comes into play, we are there. And we try to make it really cool too. That's why I have my Jordans, because architects are cool and good looking too. We have to really show kids, and that's why we go to preschools, middle schools, and high schools. We got to show kids so they can make it not just as baseball players, although Dominicanos are the best. Again, another nugget there. But yeah, so our clients, because of that, are very eclectic. I mean, we take the underdogs that might have been rejected, like a client we had all the way in Dracut who didn't know how to create a bathroom next to their bedroom, and they had to go downstairs all the time, and they were elderly. They were rejected by a lot of people, and I jumped at the opportunity. Actually, our flow process came from that experience, right? So dignifying the people that probably don't have a voice, people are not listening to them. So, but we divided into multiple pillars. Before we were 50-50 commercial and residential, but during the pandemic, we became like 80-20. So the 80% is single family and 2-family renovations, and the other 20% are a hybrid of some office fit outs and restaurant work and some civic work, like a lot of churches are coming to us, which is great because we love to do that. And yeah, we've been in business for 6 years, going to 7. February 14th, that was 2017, I remember. You know, yeah, that's it. And yeah, I'm super thrilled and happy to be here. Also, I've been looking forward to sharing a podium with Hansi, you know.
I just sent him a client that he rejected, by the way.
It sounds like they were the underdogs.
I didn't. We're doing that restaurant work. We are actually. She didn't get the memo. We are doing that restaurant. We met yesterday.
Okay, great.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your backstory, what you guys do, your personalities. It's a beautiful thing. So I appreciate you sharing that little tidbit about what you guys are doing and the work and the impact you guys are doing and the growth as well. As we can see with Michael, it's not just in the Boston area. We're going nationwide, which is a fantastic thing to see. So congratulations on that and continued success. Now moving forward a little bit regarding to really what we're here about, which is really to talk about the capital journey. So saying that, as we all know, when we start our business, the question is how are we going to start it, how are we going to fund it? So when that scenario came around for you, Michael, even if it came to acquiring software, even computers, it's an expense. How did you open a business? How did you acquire that first small or large round capital there at that point?
Sure. So thinking about this panel discussion today, I realized that the whole startup experience of raising capital for me was more of a financial strategy issue, because I knew the type of business I wanted to create, business consulting. It's not really one that a lot of investors want to go after, right? It's not that kind of business. And I also had to decide, well, what do I need to do to build the competencies, to build the structure, to actually have a business? So one thing I knew that I didn't want it just to be me. I wanted to build an employer and hire people. So part of the process was a long process. Part of it was going to grad school. So I guess in a way the financial plan was getting a student loan, tapping into my 401k, and grad school was my way of R&D in the beginning of that. other part of financial strategy is you're leaving the workforce. So the absence of salary, that also is factored in.
Absolutely.
So I had to really consider that. Whether if you're married, your partner, your family, you have to have that group discussion. Is this going to be feasible? That's all kind of part of it. So all that said, kind of the initial funding was bootstrapped. $1,000 deposit into a checking account. That's how it started.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and that's one of the journeys as we can see that it's the power of investing in yourself there, as Claire was mentioning earlier. Yes, how about you?
So I would say I started very young, probably my business, I want to say maybe 25 years old. And we're a service industry, so if you're a service industry versus a selling product, you can start with nothing. All you really need is a client. And a dream. And so in any service, someone said to me, when you start your business, you just have to exist on the web. And so I would say it came from nothing. I'm an immigrant. I was poor. We have no wealth. So everything was built, but it started with just having a computer, web presence, and a client. And so when I left my job, I did go into teaching, like part-time, and I was hustling. I was teaching at 4 places, like the BAC, MIT, RISD, and that was kind of side to help me survive. So that's one, and then we can talk about the growth later. The second is I do also have a 501c3 nonprofit that provides art to communities in need, and to do that, I had no client. We have no client. I wanted a different kind of approach. That was then through crowdsource, a lot of through Kickstarter. You have an idea and you crowdsource your family and your friends and people that believe in your idea, and use social media, at that time Twitter, to get the word out and people believing in your idea. So that's two alternative paths to then the banking industry of getting capital.
Right, all the way. And the 501c3.
Oh, it's called Brace.
Thank you, it's Brace. But that's also a different journey at that point as well, because it's a very different process for you to acquire that 501c3 compared to establishing an LLC or even starting in the smaller scale with the DBA there at that point too. So there's a lot of work that goes there.
And I had a pro bono lawyer for the 501c3.
That's great, absolutely. So just maybe the ability to expand that network as well and finding those individuals that are there to help you, because they are. It's just about building that network and going out there and, I don't know. Darwin.
Yeah, so was listening a lot to her because we are in the same service industry, and the stories are kind of different. So the way that flow happened, there was a lot of frustration, right? I worked at multiple offices and I saw that something was missing, something wasn't really resonating with me. And the same thing happened to my business partners. We would be driving from our jobs, different jobs, and be, crying about how horrible it felt, to be somebody else's tool in many instances. So as she said, in this one we do agree, it doesn't take much, right? So it's like, well, I already have a really powerful computer I used when I was in college, right? I already have a bunch of cracked softwares that I couldn't afford. So you know what? We could probably make this happen. It started out of my basement, right? So it was my basement, which was actually my gardening apartment. It was a basement gardening apartment. I found a lot of other misfits, crazy enough people to try to do this. Started with design competitions, and then I looked into how can this really be a thing? How can this really work? But I've always had a very bold mindset, like a go big or go home, right? So we're like, okay, it's gonna, tomorrow we have a board meeting. It's like, what's a board? What's a board member? It's like, all of you are board members, So and it started happening, and that dream, that vision, that desire, right? When there's a will, there's a way. Started to kind of yeah, it's like a virus, I guess, almost. Like it starts becoming part of your DNA, and you fake until you make it. You know, you say I'm Darguin Fortuna, architect from Flow Design, and oft times that then sounds like, yeah, he sounds legit. You know, let's give him the business, right? And that's how we grew from the basement with just 3 of us, and then moved into our bigger office. Now renovated our own office, and it continued to grow. But you know, a lot of like really angels showed up. A lot of angels, I will call people from God that come into your life and just really somehow you have to identify that they are the mentors for you. Like that's I'm the Jedi, you're my mentor. You know, so and then you just follow that bliss, and everything starts opening up. So I don't know if I answered the question, but the funding part, I'm gonna try to make it short. So I was working at another office on the side while I was thinking of this idea of flow, and the reason for flow was because everything else was very rigid. So we needed something that wasn't rigid, and Latinos are not rigid. We're very fluid. So we were like, okay, I was doing consulting work for this architect based out of Hopkinton, who is actually the brother of Steve Carell, the office guy, right? So he didn't know how to do renderings, so he didn't have anybody to do renderings for him. And I connected with him, and I was like, I can do the renderings. And again, Latinos, we hustle. That's another thing. We're grinders. We grind, like there could be $1 million there, and we're like, nah, I'm good at grinding here, because we really like grinding, right? So I was like, if I put color on that rendering, I could turn that into $2,000. I'm selling him that rendering for like 500 black and white. It took the same amount of time, by the way. He doesn't know. So I just did 3 different versions of the rendering and threw in a boring, stupid watermark on it, like $2,000 more, you get that. Yeah, it was already done. I could have just taken the thing. So that incorporated Flow Design Architects on February 14th. Those $2,000, and we did a bunch of things wrong. We didn't have an attorney to help us incorporate. So then we hired an attorney to fix all of the things I did. I wrote the articles of organization and gave everything to my kids, whatever. So it was really fun. But
it's about the sacrifice.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That's what I'm noticing, the big theme here. I think we're very fortunate that our panelists here had experience in their specific field, had the confidence as well, it sounds like, and had their families, had their network there to be able to help them. But at the end of the day, it's all about the sacrifice. Seeing that little thing here that you might be able to explore and maximize it there at that point. In your scenario, talk to your families and make sure that the affordability, there's something, you gotta pay the bills. I mean, that's obviously at the end of the day, you gotta be able to support your family and be able to create that. Now, one of the things you just mentioned is the team that it sounds like you acquired after. So when you opened the business, did you have a team at that point? And what I mean by team, you know, the attorneys, the bankers, that kind of team.
And is the microphone now?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'm usually the one that has really terrible with the microphone, right, kind of projection here, so appreciate your patience. So again, it was kind of, kind of windy road. I think you mentioned having a team of advisors, people around you, right? And that's kind of my experience as well. I put together a small group of my friends that I respected in their own careers. I called it the Rep Advisory Board. It sounded really fancy, and we had 0 business, which is media. We met a couple of times. I was living in New York City at the time, and remember, we have recordings from those moments, and so it's really nice to kind of look back at that. For me, that was a kind of an accountability mechanism. You know, if I shared this, then it was becoming more real. Then I had to really kind of move forward with that. And I think starting as an entrepreneur, gosh, I mean, it's really tough. And you really have to think about it. Am I going to really commit to this? It's really difficult. It's a windy road. So they did help kind of put some perspective on just the path and lessons learned and such. So remind me of the question.
Your team there that you had, right?
Yeah. So I did mention that my goal was to hire a team. So I would just kind of collaborate with people. It was more of a contractor basis.
Absolutely.
And that's how it started. But I did hire my first employee, I believe it was in 2019. I hired myself eventually as an employee, which is an important step when there's consistent W-2 income. And gradually started hiring and becoming that employer. Playing the HR role is very interesting as well.
Absolutely, another team that you need as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll add, in terms of like funding conversation, while I didn't feel like I needed a lot of funding up front, and you mentioned the credit card as the option, so that was my kind of first,
Perfect.
Funding. So obviously, you have to think with the personal credit score, there's a lot of factors. I had over time improved all of that, so I knew that I could qualify for a decent credit card. So I had I think it was like an 18-month zero APR Amex. So that was my startup funding, essentially. And then when I got to the phase where, okay, now I'm gonna hire people, I have to worry about payroll, I have to worry about covering months of operating expenses, that's when I started that journey of, okay, now we need some other alternatives there.
Absolutely, absolutely, awesome, thank you for that. Nancy, I know you mentioned that in your nonprofit, you were able to get the help of a pro bono attorney to help you with that portion of it.
So I forgot to mention that when I jumped to start the practice, I was working very long hours, and I said, like my husband and I would just eat at the dinner table and talk about our boss and our long hours. And so we realized that's the time to leave. But I always worked really hard, and when I left, my bosses actually gave me our first commission as a gift. So that was the design of a bar, an own bar in downtown Boston. And it was very small, but that was our first kind of money. And at that time, I was not licensed, so we were practicing as designers. I was running the business for the first 6 months, and I got busy, and I told my husband that he needed to leave his job because I needed an employee. I needed help. And I think when you're young and naive, and we were in the basement too, I think you just take more risks. I just feel like everything is low in terms of your cost. And then in terms of once I started to have income, one thing I was always consistent is I always had payroll. I never paid myself until I just started learning about business during a pandemic. When a business consultant that I hire once a year said, "You're not running a business, you're running a hobby." And that was the first realization that for the last 18 years, I was running a hobby. But the people that I always had with me from the beginning was always a bookkeeper, a lawyer, because once you're licensed, you have a lot of liability and risk. So you always need a lawyer, a bookkeeper, and then your CPA for the end of the year. And for some reason, I always had people always on payroll, even if they were part-time. I didn't mess with because I think Massachusetts is very strict with contractors and architecture services. So that's who were around me. And then later on, the most important person is a business consultant. And I started learning about business during the pandemic, and I can talk about that later.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that journey took a while to get there. And even though it might have taken a little while, obviously you were still working and flourishing there at that point too. But then you got to that next level thanks to that too at that point. Absolutely.
So regarding the team, again, there were a lot of kind of people that were attracted to what we were all about, but it started with me, Marco Severino, who is another architect, we're both from the Dominican Republic. We actually met in the Dominican Republic and happened to find ourselves here. And then, but the first person that we hired was Julio Gutierrez, who is from Aguascalientes, Mexico. And he worked with me at another office, and he was crazy enough to work a flow for $12 an hour. That was what we could do, right? He worked at Plum and Flow at the same time, and he had to decide and came to Flow. We then found ADP, that became our payroll company. It was a great decision. They don't pay me, so I'm just telling you the truth. It was great. It's been great. And I'll tell you later why it was great for some applications that we needed to do. Then the attorney came afterwards when we were kind of turning the company into me and Marcos. We were like, well, how do we do this? Because my ex-wife was involved at the company too. And then, I was getting divorced, and we hired an attorney to fix everything. It's like, well, this is all. He was like, oh my gosh, where do you get all this language? Like, Google?
ChatGPT that.
Yeah. So that's we got the team together, like, And that I still do a lot of all that. You know, like the team was Marcos, me, and Julio, and now we are 12. But you know, and I'm still finding my place, by the way, within the company, because I do so many things. But that's how, you know, that was the team. Now, like, again, we do have an accountant that works with us and helps us make decisions. Our clients are and have been our advisors, believe it or not, because most of them are developers and entrepreneurs, and they've been in business for a while. So that's kind of why we got our first credit card not too long ago, by the way, like 2 months ago. And it's because we really listen. We're sponges. You know, I do talk a lot, but I do listen more. For real. For real. No, and it's like, well, because anything they say is a nugget that I didn't have to go to Harvard to get, right? They did. Well, I didn't go to GSD or Yale or any of those other. I went to the VAC, you know, but I am still reaping all the benefits because I do find all these mentors and I listen to them, and like they've done something amazing with their lives, right? Like they're developing all these properties and all these different things. So we listen a lot, and me and Marcos, in our drives home, we drive far from our office. Now I live far, 2 hours, 1 hour away from the office. We kind of bounce off of each other. What was your experience today with this client? Well, this client did this. So and then we're like, we should get a credit card. Yeah. And then the other thing is from we should get a credit card, which is something people now pick me as the impulsive individual. But the thing is, when I say we should get a credit card, I've already thought about it for 5 years, right? So they're like, well, you just mentioned you wanted to get a credit card, and it's like, yeah, I just call it, we have one already. So because I've been thinking about it, but people don't know, I've been already kind of playing with the idea, you know. And that's how we've been. And when you start your business, taking risks. But the thing is, as immigrants, come on, we can with one hand back, one hand, you know what I mean? Like, we're not, it's like, well, I started from the bottom. Down south, you know what I mean? So you have really nothing to lose. So it really is, and we're still very like risk. I am the risk guy at the company, but you know, I always test it within a small sample of the office.
Marcos there for you to be able to kind of bounce those ideas.
That's another thing. So we're the yin and the yang. He should be here. He's the financial guy. I'm just the vision. If it was up to me, because everything sounds like a great idea. It's like, oh, we should. That's a great idea. He's like, no, Darwin, the numbers don't work. You know, he's good at that.
Right. But that team there at that point too, even as the journey went, the team kept building and growing and seeing those resources. And you know, one of the things that I constantly hear, I think a little from this specific question, is that you guys became vulnerable and open to ideas, because I know it takes your pride to take your pride down a little bit, to pick someone's brain. Even though they might be very experienced, you still need to humble yourself down and learn those different things, so that way you can maybe take that in your own spin and then be able to apply it to your own business at that point. So thank you for sharing that. So now let's move it fast forward. Fast forward a few years, and now you guys have grown. There's revenue coming in, and now you guys might be at a point that you guys have grown to an extent that maybe capital is required now. If that was the case, what event might have happened there to say, hey, you know, we do need to acquire that capital, and then what did you do to get ready to acquire that capital?
Sure. So I think my story, what I can share is sort of this experience of some walls and some successes and some frustrations.
That's the journey,
right? So I guess the event was that, okay, we're talking about risk. If we want to grow, we have to take some risks. I get a lot of anxiety when it comes to, especially when other people are involved. They go, gosh, if I'm going to hire another 5 people, am I going to be able to pay them more than 6 months? You know, what's going to happen? So I need a bit of peace of mind. I need that kind of buffer, some insurance. So while we were getting some cash flow, revenue was good for the moment. I needed some kind of protection, so I thought, well, line of credit would be great. Maybe a loan, because we also want to invest in some development on maybe another kind of service. So there were ideas of where we can put that funding, and that funding would be 2 good years. This is revenue generating activity. So here I go, you know, on that path of looking at what my options are. Well, you know, I had that student loan, so I have a relationship with that bank. Let's go see over there. They said, well, looks like you've grown a lot since last year, but we're only going to look at last year because that's the full year. And that's not very much revenue. and we only will give a loan at maybe 15% of that revenue, so that's really insignificant. That was a no-go. My personal banking was with a non-bank, so that wasn't an option. I went to a well-known regional bank here, and they said, well, we don't have a relationship with you, so you can't get a loan with us, you can't get a line of credit with us. I was doing my business banking, what I still do with Blue Line, because I like the platform, the technology, but there was the opposite problem. So most banks said, well, we won't talk to you if we don't have an existing relationship. But for some weird reason, Blue Line said, oh, our line of credit product is only for new customers. If you're a current customer, we can't offer it to you. So that, I mean, just like so many frustrating points.
Right.
So there was a period of time where that first seeking of capital did not yield anything at all. So we just organically grew and went through another year. And then started to explore, people are familiar with the site Hello Alice. Has anyone ever been to that site? A few people. Hello Alice.
Hello, Alice, yes.
Yeah, so it is a site I recommend. And I did get some good connections, and it resulted in a line of credit. But one thing I'll say about that, and I think that's just the way it works, they connect you with bankers and brokers and such. But one recommendation is always ask questions. Make sure you really understand what they're saying, because he kind of teased with this, so it's 3% loan. It's like 3%, well, that makes no sense. What do you mean by that? So it was 3% per month, and then when you, on a monthly rate, and when you really amortize it, then that's essentially, I think it came out to be about 30 or 40% on an annual basis. So you really have to keep digging through, because obviously I do not accept that offer. Yeah, there's, I mean, I could go on with even more stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I'll kind of pause there.
Thank you, thank you.
Where
thank you.
did you land at the end?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so it did produce a connection for a line of credit, but really expensive terms. So that was the emergency. So I have now 65,000 line of credit, that's there. That was my peace of mind. But I wasn't going to use that money, it's too expensive. So I did get to, I think it's called Connect to Capital, the number 2. And we talked about CDFIs.
Absolutely, right.
And it's a network of CDFIs, and I ended up with a loan there.
Through CDFI.
Through CDFI.
Absolutely. Hey, how was that process? Was it as in-depth as the bank, a little bit more, a little bit less?
So it is a different process, you know. The first one was a bit more of kind of salesy and traditional, and kind of really like, oh my gosh, I have to really kind of filter through the noise. The latter was more, well, these are mission-driven, some of them nonprofits. Their mission is to help minority-owned businesses. And I think you mentioned it's flexible underwriting. They're looking at different things. It's not just your credit score. It's not just your balance sheet. It's a bit upon character and what kind of business you're doing, your activity and such. So it opened a door for another creative option. And that was a $35,000 loan for a very specific reason. That was for kind of a path to hire my first manager, but also put a portion to R&D as we're developing a new product now.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Thank you. And one of the things that Claire mentioned, and you, Michael, you're mentioning right now as well, and as a banker, I've mentioned to my customers as well, you want to know what your intent is when you're looking for a loan. There are times that customers come in and say, I want a loan, and you ask them what do you want it for, and they just say, we just want peace of mind. Well, I get it all day. It might be ideal to have that peace of mind, but a loan's not the way to go with that, first of all. It's more of a line of credit. But even with that being said, there's really no other intent than just having that peace of mind when that's not really the full deal. So having that intent, having that idea, having that game plan is so imperative for you to be able to talk to that banker, and the banker knows that you know what you're talking about there at that point as well. So here's.
Okay. Before I go into the loans, I do want to say that the Boston Business Journal put out a list of, based on 2022 revenues for minority-owned businesses, and Studio Luz made number 3 for architecture. And we made 34 out of the state of all minority-owned businesses. And I was really shocked because I didn't think my revenue was really high. So,
But it's the impact as well, the impact that you have.
well, it's based on revenue.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm letting you know that I was 34 out of all the different minority businesses in the state of Massachusetts, and number 3 for architecture. You have to voluntarily put your revenue. So there are firms that probably didn't put, or businesses, but to me, it was a great milestone, but also a shock
Yeah.
to where we are in the state of Massachusetts for businesses. So I just wanted to, before I forget that.
Thank
So
you.
in
We didn't
regard,
apply, otherwise we would have been number 1.
yeah. Don't worry, I was looking for your name.
We kept a non-disclosure agreement.
He was helping the underdog.
David Ortiz didn't want me to do that. They didn't want me.
So in terms of loans, so our first ever loan was an SBA loan to acquire our first office space in the Seaport District because we were constantly being gentrified out. And so we needed to own. So that was our first kind of SBA loan experience. And then that was in 2008. And then our next loan was a small bank. I needed an equity line, and I only received 20,000. That was my first equity line, which was low, but I needed something. And then maybe 8 years ago, or I asked for more, and they were like, okay, we'll give you a little bit more. We're gonna give you 60,000 of an equity line. But we're gonna put collateral on that business property that you have. So I thought this was like normal practice, that they were putting collateral on a property to give me a $60,000 equity line. It didn't make sense, but I didn't know anything. It was only until my business advisor thought that was crazy and based on my revenue. And so there was a networking event put out by it was through the Boston Foundation, the Boston Equity Fund kind of network. And that's where I met, and names are important, so I want you to remember this name. That's where I met Natalia Uturbi, who used to work for the city, helping small businesses. And I said, Natalia, I need a bank. I need someone to give me more money for equity line. I just need that cushion. And she said, I got the right person for you. His name is Jorge. And so that's how I met Jorge. He came to my office, said, don't worry about this fat application. I'm gonna make this real easy for you. Literally in an hour. Can I take a picture with you? And he gave me over 100, I won't say the final number, but over $100,000 of an equity line, and didn't tie it to any collateral, just tied it to receivables. And it told me that was a struggle, that I was a Latina, minority-owned businesses, and they were giving me all this flack, all this craziness, until I found another Latina that connected me to a Latino that said, come here. So that's the importance of access to capital and your network.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing that. It's how it works there.
Yeah, so from those $2,000, right, that we got and incorporated, and created 1 million shares. I don't know why we did that. I don't know why was I doing it. I got into a car accident too, and that was a fortunate event because I got $11,000 from the car totaled, and I didn't need to drive it anyway. And I had 2 kids, by the way. Emmeline and DJ and Emmeline were right there too. Stay there with me.
You're being recorded.
Yeah, I know.
You're being recorded.
But it's great. No, I'm saying stay with me. Stay with me with that craziness. I mean, come on, it's a fighter. That's why we got 3 kids. So, but yeah. So that crash really helped. But me and Marcos have always been very careful about loans. and things like that. It's like almost like arrópate hasta donde te llega la sábana, right? Which it could be good and it could be bad, right? Because if you have a great idea that you put your life into and you're 1,000% sure, and you just need that little cushion to make it happen, well, you should probably try it and give it a shot. So we didn't have to, we applied for a line of credit and we didn't have a lot of revenue, and it was like 10% of that little revenue. I mean, I think the first year we only made $50,000 throughout the whole year, right? Including the 11,000 from the crash and the 2,000 from that. So then the pandemic came, and that was kind of like I think Flow could have probably died if PPP loans weren't there. So that was the first loan that we really applied for. And if again, so March, we were like 4 people. We had just moved to our new office, like, not long ago. And we were like, we pay rent. It's not just the basement, it's scary. So it was the first time I even told one of the guys, you have midterms this week, right? You should probably take the week off and just focus on the midterms. They typically will come to me and ask me. I was like, because I knew we didn't have any hours. I knew we didn't have any work because it all froze. And then April, May, when the PPP was like happening, I spoke with David Silverman, another architect friend of mine, and they were talking about that, and other people were talking about it, and I was like, okay, what do I need? And created a little checklist, which is that's a big magic trick, a checklist. So, and I was like, what do I need? So I connected with Eastern Bank at that time, and we went through the checklist of all the items. So having ADP was great. Having a great person that did your taxes for you, an accountant, was great, and we can get more into the details of that. But that was seamless.
Absolutely.
And ever since that first kind of like legit application that we had to put together, everywhere we go that we apply for something, they say this has been one of the easiest transactions I've ever had to make, because everything was out of our fingerprints, or server, or information, or paperwork, or AIN number. But again, we've been very self-conscious of our process. I mean, I can close my eyes right now and backtrack to when we first incorporated. Every major decision, every little decision within my office, every color, I know how it was picked. So if you're not aware of what's really going on, what the names, the Dudley and Bradley name, like people don't know what those things are, the EIN number, the first letter you get when you first incorporate, they don't know that. So we created a very beautiful and clean folder structure.
Structure, absolutely.
Yes.
The organization, the ability for you to be ready to give that information out, because that's one of the things that I encountered. I know many of my banker colleagues encounter as well through the whole PPP scenario, that while our Latino or minority-owned businesses want to acquire those funds, they weren't ready. Why weren't they ready? Because they didn't have that paperwork ready to go. So it's imperative for you to have that paperwork ready to go. Hopefully something like that never happens again, but when you are ready to apply for that loan.
Well, even if it isn't that loan, I think having the structure of what you will be required anyway, and like what's next, like I was on top of my banker, like I became very close with him. It's like, what will be needed for the forgiveness? Like I want to, would you just apply for it? I want to be ready for that because that's what I'm going for, right? So I did the first round and the second round, and now this year we finally jumped into the American Express credit card. Those points are really juicy. So now we're fighting at the office, who is traveling where? Right? So, and ironically, American Express gave us more money than the line of credit that we were going to try to get with the last 2 years of revenue, which was kind of weird. And we just, on Friday, you and I spoke, we just got our Flow truck.
Right, absolutely right.
We walked in there and walked out with a truck, like literally driving the truck. If I didn't have, they asked for a lot of stuff to register the car, they asked for a lot, but it was all there. If you didn't have it, and I don't have 2 days to waste trying to get a truck. I only have that day, and if I don't walk out, I'm not getting a truck, period. So that's important,
Absolutely.
That's it.
Thank you for that, Darwin. No, and the organization, again, is just imperative. So we're here at the last question here. We'll have Q&A right after. So, to wrap this off, if you can reflect on your journey and maybe provide some words of wisdom to this crowd, to everybody out there, to the entrepreneurial spirit, some words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. Well, I mean, I guess the first part of it, whether we're talking about capital or just leadership in general, I think it's support network. I think it helps you make sound decisions. Whether it's on a strategic decision, financial decision, you kind of build that network around you, so you have access to a conversation. because I think it can get overwhelming, especially when you're in a world that's unfamiliar. And I think the whole capital and credit and all of this can be really overwhelming sometimes. So I think that's probably, if I reflect back from day one experience, I've always needed to tap into that in some way. Even being a sole owner, it can be a little tough. And so just finding whatever that network might be, whether it is a coach or a consultant, or even just just your personal network as well. You're talking about the organization material. So we're kind of in a unique perspective that the course of business that we are, we're exposed to all of those problems that small business owners have experienced. I personally, at the very beginning of the pandemic, probably coached, almost close to 100 businesses, helping them with the PPP. And it was heartbreaking when you kind of hear them that they never really tracked their bookkeeping before, and their tax returns show they have no revenue. So it's really tough. So for me, from day one, tracking your bookkeeping, I subscribed to QuickBooks right away, even when it was sort of low revenue, getting practice in that practice of monitoring your balance sheet from day one. That's another advice.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
That's why I said bookkeeper was number one when I started my business. So I think in terms of advice, I would say I think one of the things that was a change gamer for my business was being supported by the Boston Equity Fund, the Boston Foundation. So if any business here, if you're not there yet, if you are making over $500,000 annually, you can apply to the Boston Equity Fund. So I was a BEI. It was part of the Boston Equity Initiative cohort. And they were started during the pandemic to make sure that Black and brown businesses did not die. And that resource came to our business, and I immediately applied. But there was something to it, saying like you had to be available for 8 hours to get mentor. But with that, they were also going to give you capital. So at that time, I had applied for a $20,000 kind of loan relief with no interest that was being supported by the Boston Foundation. But I never knew that what was the most important aspect of it was to have a business advisor that I never had after 18, 19 years of my business. And I realized that I did go to Cornell University under the HEOP program, free ride. I went to Harvard Graduate School of Design, and I did not know anything about business. So if there was one advice, it would be to know how to run and operate a business. And so I was literally coached for like 4 hours a week, 3 hours a week, with their network of people that run real estate businesses, all this, and literally showed me you have to have a pipeline, you have to have a CRM, you have to, like, literally coached me after 18 years of running a small business. And with that, then it migrated to, they also provided high connectors, like you got to know this person because they're going to connect you to this person. So they were introducing me to their network, and it was all Black and brown, but my advisor was white. So my feedback to them was like, can you find a financial person that is Latino or like African American? Because they were giving me tax consultants. All these people that they were giving me were white. So I wanted to support other minority-owned businesses with my money. But what it did give me, it did connect me to this one guy, which is JC, Juan Carlos Morales. He runs Surfside Capital Advisor, and met with me. And he said, okay, give me your portfolio. I'm going to send it to my network. But what happened is I got along with this guy, and he was part of Amplify Latin. I think it was Amplify Latin, and started doing it for Latino, started giving business advice to Latino entrepreneurs. And from there, I realized how valuable business consulting was, that now I have him on payroll. So now Surfside Advisor meets with me quarterly to check all of my books and all my projections, and since I had him, our business has grown 4 times in 2 years, by 4. So I have 12 employees, but I was always running 2 to 4 for 18 years. I never grew. So he said, "You're my challenge, and I want to get you to 5 million. But to get you to 5 million, you got to have this, this, and this, and this." So my biggest advice to you is go for grants and go for resources within your network and get a business consultant. I had it all free in the beginning because I was going from one network to one network. But then I saw the value and I put them on payroll because it was giving me so much in return. So I'm putting names because these are your angels. And also I want to give shout out to Delisa Nova, who's my other angel, who's helping me as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's just, again, that work of preparedness, knowing your books, just how important that is as well. Now, finish us off.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the advice I should give, but I think the first advice should be to following that passion, actually stay in the course, right? Stay in the path, because a lot of dreams die right there, right? Mine could have died, to be honest. When I asked back in 2008, and I said, well, I'm gonna go to architecture school, my grandma said, there are no architects in mi familia. There's nobody. Oh, your cousin there, look, he's not even doing architecture anymore. And she was like, do computer science, like do computers, you know. And I didn't. I said I was, and I didn't. I stayed in architecture. So that was like, you know what? There are no more in the family. Well, I'm gonna be the first one. So first, stay in that path. That's because that's it. If not, then it's done. But then the other advice after you've been able to do that, because when you start a business, sometimes you don't know where it's going, you don't know what you're doing. Oftentimes you don't know where. I still think I don't know what I'm doing. So, but like if you stay long enough, there are things that become catchy and pop over time. Like if you stay at it long enough, eventually it's going to have to take off, right? That's it. There's no way out. Like I don't even know how to quit my own company. You can't get out. So you have to keep on going and be very organized and methodical, right? Like be a sponge for knowledge. Listen to everybody. Some people in my family say, "Well, you don't listen." It's like, well, if I would have listened to grandma, this wouldn't be here. Because it looks like I don't. Like whoever is recording, it looks like I'm not listening. It really does. It really does. But because I listen and I know where they're coming from, right? And I'm like, the gift was given to me from God. It wasn't given to you. So that's really it. The only one that can understand this language of this business, of this idea, it's me. So, we put our souls into our business. Me and Marcos have put our lives into it. So, being very thorough, very organized. She used the term a baby, and I use it a lot. And I'm like, me and Marco Severino have a baby, right? And every time we ran payroll from 2017 to now, on Friday, every other week, we would raise a cup and be like, we did it again. Because it was scary. There were times that we didn't know whether we were gonna make it. It's like we were like, oh my gosh. And I think about Julio, Adela, I think about all other kids, I think about Oliver, I think about DJ, Emily, and Aviana. I know all of everybody's name within their families and their grandmas, and I'm like, I care about all of their names, I care about them. So when you see that the organization is bigger than yourself, you're gonna find ways, and you're gonna find connections. And create all of those connections. Like everybody should be sharing all of their Instagram, by the way, Flow Design Architects, and their YouTube channel, Flow Design Architects. No, for real, because if you don't create those connections, like I'm already gonna talk to you about something, right? I'm already gonna talk to them about something. I already emailed her, by the way. Literally, I emailed her, check your email. Because honestly, that curiosity, that resilience, right? That desire to continue every day is gonna keep you. So when it comes to capital, we are hard workers already, right? But we need to be smart workers. And although we're from another place, education in finances is not something a lot of people get, even here. Even doesn't matter their color. they're not getting it. You know, it's like just the rich dad and poor dad thing, but most people don't get it. So, you know, if you understand what comes in, what comes out, don't get bling blings, don't get a Range Rover, although I did, don't, you know what I mean? So really make sure that you don't start doing stupid things,
Right.
you know? Exactly, you know, think the business is bigger than yourself, right? And that will keep you there. All right.
I use a Honda Civic.
Okay, he's good on gas though.
Well, I'm changing the pipeline. I have to drive Sunday, so they asked me, what do you do for work? I'm glad you asked.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Anybody has questions for us, for the beautiful people that we have here today? Got a question over here?
Hey, how you doing? My name's Jonathan. And I guess one of the questions I have in terms of capital, when you're getting capital from banks or venture or whoever, what department in your company gets the most capital so that you can see the most upside, like the most profit at?
Let's take that one.
Okay, sure, I'll start. We have one department. But it's actually a really great question because we talk to a lot of different business owners, entrepreneurs, and one of the first things they say, what's your priority? They say, I need to raise some capital, I need to get some funding. It just seems like it's kind of a reflex. That's the first thing in your mind. The follow-up question is, well, where is that going to go? How are you going to apply it? And I'll give it an example. So we are working with a business right now, and she talked about her story of taking the EIDL loan, which is one of the pandemic relief funding loans. She got it. It was a significant amount. And it's a community event business, and they do things like art events. And she used the funding to produce the events because that was her business. But then that's it. So the money is now just spent. It wasn't put to work. It wasn't actually now building the next step of her business. So she's going to have a bit of kind of a tough time there. So I would say, think about how you're going to use it and how that investment is going to multiply opportunity. So that might be the sales force. It might be investment into a product or some sort of innovation, or it might be something else in the context of your business. But I think it is an important question to think about, where is this money going to go?
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts from our panel?
You can answer that too real quick if you don't mind. I just have something to say about that. So you only have one department. So in architecture, one thing, by the way, the way that we think about architecture in our office is as an ecosystem. And we really do think like a machine, like it's an Amazon kind of machine. It's like a thing that has different revenues. So, and I guess maybe she's doing it already, but even if you have one department, by the way, because having one department is like eating one type of meal. Like if you only eat one type of grass, if you are an animal, whatever, and that goes gone, you're dead. So I think as an entrepreneur, we should be thinking about different revenues. That's why I have a very highly paid person that runs our YouTube channel, right? As another, like, well, if I have to make 5 million, like she wants, making drawings, ooh, that's gonna be hard. But you have to start looking at other revenue, like revenue streams, like investments, opportunity, and different departments, different things. That's why we are eclectic about everything that we take. Because I know when things really get hard, and they only do X, these other guys that I've been working with may still call me, even if I cut my fee in half. But there are other people that won't get any calls. So you have to diversify on that end too.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Good point. Any other questions from our, beautiful.
Hi, Brian Narvaez. Thank you so much for being up here and sharing your experiences. My question was for all panelists around leaning into your network. And as one topic was mentioned was universities. So universities can be a good way for idea incubation, also with funding, and hence, as you mentioned, with consulting, business consulting. How have any of the panelists, Hansi, I know you said yes, but how do you guys continue to lean into your university network? And Michael, Darwin, have you guys leaned into it? Why or why not? Thank you.
So, I don't think this is on, but.
That one does kind of turn on.
I did a better job of that.
Okay, I think I was off. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I was off. So, the university is, like, it has its own network systems. It depends what your interests are, but, it keeps fresh, like, it's innovative. It's a testing ground. I would say that I was an academic. I was doing half academic and half business. So for 20 years, I was a full-time professor. I was a tenured professor at the Rhode Island School of Design. So that's why my business consultant said, your business is a hobby, because my mind was, I was doing two things. I was not doing one thing correct. But what it did teach me, it was just very innovative, very fluid. After I left, I retired with emeritus status a year ago to run the business. It taught me to stay on my mission and on my ground, and the way that I was teaching and lecturing to students, now I had the opportunity to do it to the community. And so my relationship with the university was, it just gave me presence, recognition as a leader in that discipline. And so now I have a lot of network there, and I'm using it in different ways, that's one of my categories in my office, where I want to do university work, because I can relate to both the staff, the students, and the faculty. So it depends how you leverage it. But also, you're mentoring students. They can work for you if you can't exploit them, obviously. And the problem, when I left academia, I found it really problematic at the end. Like, academia should run more like a business, because what happened to me was I was working constantly, and there was no boundaries. Where in a business, you have boundaries. And I have that with the office staff, like, it's 40 hours, and you respect the weekends and the evenings and flexibility for parents, and university settings do not do that. So I think it depends how you want to leverage it, but the way that I've seen it being leveraged is notoriety, recognition, being a leader, and if you can do that, you can convince people of your product. So I found that to be the most value of that experience.
Yeah, so similar to you, although I do teach at the Boston Architectural College, but I do it to want to stay fresh, really, at the end of the day. It's like you always stay fresh, but also to find talent always, because I get to see actually most people that we've hired. I'm the one that makes all those, mainly the decision, because my partner trusts my judgment. It's been working so far, but you see, like, what's going on, where the trends are going. We've also leveraged it on the recognition side. We actually have won multiple awards within the school as alumni. But some of you may not have that connection, right? Your business line may not have school. So I want to kind of segue onto another thing. Believe it or not, whatever business you're thinking of, there's some that probably not, but there may be a group that associates to that. Like, for instance, I'm leveraging the American Institute of Architects even more than the school that I go to. I'm a member of the AIA, I go to events of the AIA, I'm a Young Architect Forum representative, but I'm getting so much out of that. There's so much that I get from that group. There may be another group for Restaurants Association or Real Estate Association or Bankers Association, but you pick each other's brains. You brought my seat at a bar and it's a business trip, but you may sit there and listen to all their struggles, and you can also leverage that, right? Like, now we're actually creating our own small firms awards, because it's hard to get awards within the bigger institutions. So we're like, well, can I be first? So again, using there is a group. There may be a group that already exists. Almost everything has been already created. So just leverage those groups like this. Yeah.
Great point. Absolutely.
Is it still on? Yeah. So my plan, I moved to Boston for grad school, and that was part of my entrepreneurial journey from moving from New York, and it wasn't sure if I would stay. But Boston College turned out to be an incredible environment to support just entrepreneurship in general. So I ended up taking a role as a head of programming for an entrepreneurship club at Boston College, and they started a program, an apprenticeship program, where they would pull people from the MBA program or other programs, those people that wanted to experience what it was like to build a startup. And they had several different cohorts, and I put Revly as one of the companies in this program. So we really benefited from several cohorts of students to brainstorm some of those really early stages of the business. It did produce some really good value, but at the very minimum, it was great for me because it just kept me moving. It was momentum, kept my brain going of what we were going to create. So that was kind of one experience. I would say, Boston is still relatively new to me, but this is an amazing environment. So such academia and just got a lot of great innovation at work. I mean, it's kind of the building that we're in right now as well, right? But I'll kind of conclude here. Have to also mention Alpha as a network. And I mentioned, when I hired my first employee, well, it was through Alpha actually. I did a presentation, and part of it was, maybe you remember, Revly did a presentation for one of the entrepreneurship series several years ago. And I got a call from someone afterwards, said, he listened to the presentation, that was very interesting. Let me know if you are looking for help. I'm looking for a job. And long story short, hired him. He worked for several years at Revly. And in fact, we just finished another collaboration last week. So that's another kind of story.
That's awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Darwin. I'm going to pass it over to Sophia to give us our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you to our amazing speakers, Michael, Nancy, and Darguin, and our wonderful moderator. I really appreciate the support that you give us for this event. It is awesome to hear your amazing experience. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. As you can see, it's hard and it requires a lot of strategy, and you have to be super well connected and always looking for what is next, innovating, right? You need to have one step on the right, looking for the next move. So being an entrepreneur is not easy, but you're not alone. You have a wonderful community of Latinos that are here to support you through this journey, to share those experiences, so we can lean on each other and find ways to collaborate, ways to grow together, because this is the mission of Alpha, this is the mission of Alpha Entrepreneurs, to have a thriving community where we all can support and grow together. So thank you all for taking the time to be here, and I would also like to invite you, if you're an entrepreneur, please make sure your business is part of the Alpha Entrepreneurs Collection. This is an amazing resource. We connect you, we share this list with our corporate partners and with everyone that is interested in having diverse vendors. So please submit your business there. It is a great tool for you to be out there and showcase your business. Also, if you want to be part of the community, please connect with us. We have a wonderful group on LinkedIn where we want to start sharing more resources, sharing stories, highlighting your business. So please sign up for it. I will send you the link after this event. And to also please take a look at the resource gallery that we put together. You're going to have the resources that were mentioned by Claire this afternoon in there, and other ones that you can definitely take advantage of it. And let me see. Yes, so please stay tuned for our upcoming event. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to host it at the Holt University on October 19. We have a wonderful, wonderful line of speakers that the one we have today. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And also, we have an upcoming event on July 18, talking about generosity. So it is a free event, it's online, so make sure you connect with Alpha Boston page. You will have all the information there and the registration link it would be great if you can join us. And that's it. Here are our social channels. Please connect, stay tuned, and I will invite you to continue networking, be intentional, meet other people, connect with each other, and we will see you until the next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching.